In another video, I said that when Christians debate about the Bible and homosexuality, the conversation doesn't usually go anywhere until we first address three major misconceptions. The idea that being gay is a choice, the idea that anyone could become straight if they really wanted to, and finally the idea that being gay is just about sex or sexual temptation. And in response, a viewer named Ian wrote, "I wish I could hear more from you on your third point. If gay means being exclusively sexually attracted to members of the same sex, how is this not about sex?" All right, let's talk about sex. So first off, is being gay about sex? To a lot of people, it seems obvious that being gay is about sex. To them, being gay isn't something that you are, it's something that you do, something sexual. And so they often compare being gay to other sexual things like adultery or sex before marriage or bestiality. All these comparisons are about sex acts, specifically sex acts traditionally viewed as outside God's boundaries. Sex with the wrong person, sex at the wrong time, sex with the wrong species. And being gay gets put into the same category, sex with the wrong gender. Now, to a lot of gay people, these comparisons are offensive. And when they get brought up, you'll often hear arguments about whether same-sex sex actually is outside of God's boundaries, or whether there even is a God who has boundaries to begin with. But that debate actually isn't why this is offensive to so many people. The real problem with these comparisons is that these are all sex acts, but being gay isn't a sex act. If I feel attraction to men and not women, I'm gay even if I never have sex. And that's not true for, say, adultery. Adultery is something you do. There's no such thing as a celibate adulterer. But being gay isn't something you do. There are lots of celibate gay people, and they still experience all the challenges of being gay. That's why it's so hurtful and offensive when people say things like, well, we don't have adulterer pride parades. Because it's saying that all of the pain and the fear and the struggles that so many gay people face, growing up with feelings you didn't choose, knowing that others might reject you for them, all that is the same thing as deciding to cheat on your spouse. It's taking a lifelong experience of being different and equating that to a sex act. But Ian does raise an interesting point here, because he says, okay, maybe being gay isn't about sexual activity, something you do, but it is about sexual attraction, something you want or something you're tempted by. So maybe being gay isn't like committing adultery, but it is like being tempted to commit adultery. And they don't have parades for that either. So is that a better analogy? Is being gay about sexual temptation? I've heard this from a lot of people, that telling someone you're gay might not be telling them what to do in bed, but it's at least telling them what you want to do in bed. And so they say quite reasonably, I think, why do you need to tell people about your sexual desires? I mean, if acting on your desires isn't a sin, then just keep it to the privacy of your bedroom. And if acting on your desires is a sin, then the desires themselves are a temptation. And like any other sexual temptation, you just have to have self-discipline. We all have to resist sexual temptation sometimes, and this isn't any different. Just don't act on it. Don't dwell on it in your heart, and certainly don't make a big deal about it. Being gay isn't an orientation, they say. It's just sexual temptation. And I totally understand the thinking here, but even if we all could agree that same-sex sex is outside God's boundaries, this approach still misses the mark. Because yes, gay people experience some temptations that straight people don't, and vice versa. But being gay isn't just a sexual temptation, because being gay, like being straight, isn't just about wanting sex. Think about it this way. Why do straight people get married? A lot of reasons, right? Love, companionship, connection, intimacy, support, family. Ask happily married people, and they talk about how much they love and respect their spouse, how supportive and encouraging they are, what a comfort they've been in difficult times. People might even refer to their spouse as their better half, suggesting that they're so much a team that they would feel incomplete without this person. Now, I think we have to be careful with that kind of language, because single people aren't half people. But it's significant that when people talk about their happy marriages, they don't say, the best thing about being married is that I get to have lots of sex. In fact, some happily married couples have little or no sex at all. As important as sex is in many marriages, it's not the most important thing. Just ask someone who's recently lost their spouse. I can't fathom how painful that must be, but why are they so sad? It's not because they miss the sex, right? I mean, imagine going up to someone grieving the death of their spouse and saying, yeah, I know it's tough, but everybody has to go without sex sometimes. You just need self-discipline. I mean, can you imagine how horrible and tone deaf that would sound? When this person is lonely and struggling with the loss of their life companion, to have that reduced to being about sex? To have someone think that their pain is because they're having trouble resisting sexual temptation? How offensive. Well, that's how it sounds to gay people when folks compare being gay or wanting a gay relationship to sexual temptation. Gay people long for connection and companionship just as much as straight people. And yeah, sure, there are people, both gay and straight, who are just looking for no strings attached sex. But many others, gay and straight, want a relationship. And when someone wants a committed relationship, marriage or otherwise, that's not about sex. It's a desire for companionship, intimacy, human connection. To suggest that's just about sex is as offensive and tone deaf as if we were to say that to a straight person missing their spouse. But hang on. As Ian points out, human connection, intimacy, family, and such can exist without sexual attraction. So, if it's not about sex, why does our orientation come into this at all? Okay, fair enough. If a gay guy like me wants companionship so bad, why not just marry a woman? If it's not about sex, why should it matter that I'm not sexually attracted to her? Well, part of the answer is that sex is an important part of most marriages. Even the Bible talks about its importance. It's just not the most important part. But honestly, that's not even the major issue. The bigger part of the answer is that when I say straight people are attracted to the opposite sex and gay people are attracted to the same sex, I'm not just talking about sexual attraction. I'm talking about romantic attraction. And I don't mean Hollywood fairy tale romance. I mean the kind of romantic love I saw between my parents when I was growing up. They demonstrated powerfully to me what it looks like for two people to be in love with each other and working as a team. They were married for more than 40 years. And when my mom died, it was so hard on my dad. She really had been his everything. But eventually, he knew he had to move on because he still had a lot more life left to live. So he gradually started dating again, and eventually he found a woman he loved, and he got remarried. Now, no person can just replace another person. But being in a happy marriage again has really made such a huge difference for my dad. Emotionally, spiritually, and even physically, I can see how it's changed him for the better. But what if I'd said to him, Dad, I know you're lonely without Mom, but you don't need to get remarried. Just find a single buddy of yours and be roommates. Then you won't be lonely. That'll fix everything. That's just not the same, is it? And we know that instinctively. Why? Because there are a lot of differences between a marriage and a friendship. Differences that aren't about sex. The level of commitment is different, their priority in your life is different, but also with romantic love comes a much deeper, more intimate level of emotional connection. Think about the feelings you have when you fall head over heels in love with somebody. When cartoon characters float through clouds with hearts for eyes, or Bambi's friends talk about being Twitter-pated, that's not sexual lust they're depicting, right? It's romantic attraction. And with the right person over time, the butterflies of infatuation settle down into something more stable, something powerful and selfless. Romantic love. And when two people share that, it unlocks something special between them. An intimate kind of connection that goes so much deeper than friendship. Romantic attraction and sexual attraction aren't the same thing. But for most people, they're so intertwined, they can't easily be separated out. So if you're a typical straight man, there's a kind of connection you can have with a woman that you just aren't going to be able to have with a man. He might be your best buddy in the world. You might talk about your friendship as a bromance, but there's always going to be a level of connection you can't have with him because you don't have those kind of feelings for him. You may love him very much, but you're not in love with him because you're not romantically attracted to him. That's how I feel around a woman. I can love her very much, like a friend, like a sister, but I can never feel for her what a straight guy can. And that's why, even though we call it sexual orientation, it's relevant in so many parts of our lives that have nothing to do with sex. Being gay affects how I relate to women, how I relate to men, how my brain works, and the options that are or aren't available to me to have connection and companionship, to experience love. I believe Ian when he says that the church people he knows do care about all this and want to help gay people have intimate, healthy connections with members of the same sex in a non-sexual way. And I can already anticipate that some of my viewers will be frustrated with that language for a variety of reasons. But let's keep to a charitable interpretation here, because I think this is a reasonable question to ask. Can a church support gay people in their need for human connection without supporting same-sex sex? Honestly, this question could use a whole video to itself, and this video has already been long, so I'm going to keep this brief. But here's a quick response. I do think many churches want to do the right thing here. I do. But I don't think most of them have really thought it through. See, in the past, many people believed that if gay people had healthy relationships with same-sex friends, it would cause us to stop having gay feelings. But it turned out it didn't work that way, which, by the way, I discuss in much more depth in the updated and expanded edition of my book, Torn. It's got a brand new chapter about this and what really happened and why it didn't work. But as I explain in the book, unfortunately, to this day, many church programs for gay people are still built on that same approach, and it's just not helpful. Now, when it comes to helping people feel less alone, theoretically, yes, I think it's possible for churches that don't support same-sex marriage to still provide community and support for single gay people. But any such approach would need to seriously consider all the differences between friendship and marriage and all the human needs for intimacy and companionship that aren't met by just having a buddy. How do we meet those needs for people if we're going to ask them to be single all their lives? There's a reason the early church was so focused on caring for widows and orphans. People without immediate family are more vulnerable to all sorts of challenges, not only loneliness and depression, but even physical neglect in illness or old age. Who cares for us when we can't care for ourselves, if not our family? If the church wants to care for such people, well, it's going to take way more effort than just inviting them to a weekly church event or telling them to make more friends. And that's ultimately the point I was making in my original video. If you believe that same-sex marriage is wrong, but you also believe that God loves gay people, then the next question you need to ask is how God expects those gay people to get all their needs met, if not through marriage. There might be many different answers to that question, but whatever the answer is, it's got to go a lot deeper than just abstain from sex. Because gay people experience a lot of challenges in our lives, some that we share with single straight people, but others that are unique to us. And the vast, vast majority of them have nothing whatsoever to do with sex.